Hi, everyone. This is Ellen from the Astrology Journal. Now that we are a few days into the solar eclipse energy, I wanted to take a look at the chart and share some of my observations about it. It helps me to actually be in the energies to ground some of what I share. I had lots of ideas before, but I prefer to wait until I'm in it. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about what's happening in the world. My prayers that go out to everybody in the Israel-Palestine conflict. I pray for a speedy resolution and for ending of this conflict in a way that is lasting and allows everybody there to thrive. And yeah. I had been playing around with the possibility of starting to look at mundane charts, charts about political events and that sort of thing. But, the truth is, it's not my realm. It's not, I do not believe it's what I'm here to do. I am here to explore and share from the inner realms as best as I'm able. So that's where I'm going to keep focusing. So, this is the solar eclipse chart for the Virgo new moon. And if you read my article on, I think I called it Footprint, I had this red line as a blue line. I forgot to change it to red. I'll go over what this pattern is and talk about all that in a minute. So we had the the Libra solar eclipse, so a new moon on October 14th, 2023. It was 1:55 in the afternoon Eastern Daylight Time. This is what the chart looks like on the natural wheel. You can see the sun and the moon here at 21 degrees Libra. Interestingly, there are two balsamic conjunctions, one from Mercury. Mercury goes in the same direction, so it's in a balsamic conjunction to the sun. And then the south node, it goes in the opposite direction. It's in a balsamic conjunction to both the sun and the moon. So there's a lot of balsamic energy, and it's relating to this idea of Libra, which is about our partnerships and our relationships and harmony and disharmony. So it can be about balance, but really we experience imbalance to be able to better understand the balance and to help us get back. It's really about dynamic balance, and sometimes it can be really extreme if things are really out of balance. So, and then the eclipse energy is kind of like a shadow goes over that. It's almost to me like a reset. It's like, okay, we're just going to take out the light for a second, and then when it shines back on, maybe you can see it with fresh eyes. That's just my conception. It's not about what traditionally eclipses have been understood to be about. I don't believe so. That's just kind of how I'm working with it, how I'm seeing it. So we're seeing with new eyes. The other thing too to think about is that balsamic energy can make things really, really big. And if been living kind of in harmony, in alignment, then what that ends up being is the sharing of what, all we have lived. And it's shared as a form of, in a way, as a gift to those around us, humanity, or whatever. But it can also be this really big energy, and it's like if we haven't lived our lives in harmony in all sorts of reasons for that, I certainly haven't. Then what we can be presented with is like it all of it writ large, like all of the disharmonies and dysfunctions writ large in front of us, so we can see it, so we can understand it. And the south node has to do with our past. It's our evolutionary past. So things coming up from our evolutionary past having to do with this idea of harmony and disharmony, relationships, that sort of thing. So that's just a general thought about this. And then what I want to do is I want to look at this pattern in the chart. This is not an official pattern. First, before I go there, there's the T-square between Pluto and the nodes. That's been in effect for most of the years. So Pluto represents our soul in evolutionary astrology, and then the nodes represent the soul's evolutionary trajectory from where it's been, the south node, to where it's going, the north node. And so this T square is like this dynamic evolutionary kind of pressure we've been under all year, for kind of to grow evolutionary. And the charts that a lot of the charts, the focus has been on the south node. We really have to resolve the past to be able to move forward to the future. That's been a big theme in a lot of the charts. So, and I see that as also true in this chart. So we have this envelope pattern. Within that envelope pattern is this yod pattern that's made up of this triangle, two blue dotted lines and a purple line. And it's pointing to the south node. It's pointing to the past, and the south node in particular. So it's pointing to this disharmony around relationships. And the inconjuncts, I like to compare them to, it's a 150-degree aspect. And I like to compare that to visually to the cables on a suspension bridge coming down and then angle to the road. The inconjuncts compared to an opposition, this orange line comes down, it's like angled off of the inconjunct is like angled off of the opposition. So if we think about the opposition as the road, the inconjuncts are supporting that. So the inconjunct is about making adjustments, and those cables on a bridge, on a suspension bridge, are also about making adjustments. But we often think of the inconjunct in a negative way. It's like this frustration. It's like we're constantly having to make these adjustments. But I would argue that's because we don't understand the function of it. If those adjustments weren't constantly being made on the suspension bridge, there's all this kind of buffeting that boat that happens from the cars driving across it, and the winds and all this sort of stuff. And so there need to be structural aspects to the bridge that take that disruption, that take that stress on the bridge and translate it somewhere. In this case, the cables translated into the ground so that the bridge doesn't fall apart. And so to me, that's the purpose of the inconjuncts. And so we have I would argue, we have a lot of support here around the south node, the past, and the extremes potentially, the imbalance that perhaps we have been living in the past, and the Neptune, which is ultimately the ideal and the higher love and our dreams and our imagination. But it's the all-pervasive divine, whatever word you give to that, that's just the all-pervasive love that envelops all of us, that we're not always aware of because of these various imbalances. So Neptune can also present as, or can manifest as, things like addictions and things like deep grieving and things like so to me, deep grieving wouldn't be a negative manifestation. The question would be, are we able to grieve in such a way that we can get to the other side of it? Like grieving, I would argue, is part of what needs to happen sometimes to restore balance. For me personally, I've been experiencing a lot of grieving since this solar eclipse has happened. And it's for me, it's specific to early childhood. That's Mercury in the balsamic conjunction, and especially specific to school experience. I literally one morning started sobbing out of the blue. I just felt something, and I just kind of stayed with that something, and I just started sobbing. And it had to do with when I first had to go to school. So we may have to get in touch with that kind of loneliness, that sense of loneliness that comes in. So Neptune wouldn't be loneliness per se. There's a sextile with Pluto, which is in Capricorn, and that Capricornian energy can be that sense of isolation and aloneness. So at a soul level, there may be some of that. For me, certainly, that's, I think, a really deep aspect of what I've been going through in my life. Like I wasn't even aware of how deeply lonely and isolated I felt until that came up the last few days. So that's needed in terms of processing the energy. And then, interestingly, there is this red line here to Venus, and this red line is a novile series aspect. I think this is 160 degrees. It's a waxing aspect. And that novile series, any aspect in the novile series, is ultimately about this idea of the promise that is to come down the road. So you think about a fruit tree, and this is based on what I read in John Sandberg's article on the novile series aspect. I think that's his name, John Sandberg. I could have that last name wrong. I'll try to find the article and give a link to it, but it had a big impact on me. So this idea of the fruit that is to come down the road. So it's the fruit, but it's not there yet. So if we think about a tree in hibernation mode, it will fruit at some point, but it's not going to fruit until later. So there's that promise. So I think of it as like a promise, the promise that is to come. But we have to, there are stages that we have to go through, and we need conditions that, there are conditions that we need to be able to do that. And so the promise of the fruit to come, if we think of Neptune as divine love or higher love, and we think of Venus as embodied love, incarnated love, human love, Venus rules Libra. It has to do with relationships. And this is the way that I often think about it. Neptune is considered the higher vibration, or Venus, we can say, is considered the lower vibration of Neptune. So they're both about love. And in my view, I was raised Catholic, and sort of implicit in what I heard growing up, what was kind of implicit in the environment in which I grew up, was that because we're in these bodies, that is proof that we are bad. We are here because we are being punished. And I think the opposite is true. I think we came here to figure out a way to embody this higher love, to bring it down into incarnated form. And Venus right now is in Virgo. And Virgo is about practice. Practice makes purpose. It's about preparation. It's about paying attention to the details. And so we can have all these great ideas about love. I'm certainly one of those people. But are we actually paying attention to? So we practice. The idea of practice isn't to just keep practicing what we've already been doing, because if that's unskillful, that's just going to get us more unskillfulness. The idea of practice is, perfecting the skill, actually paying attention to the feedback we get. We learn a little bit, we get feedback, we learn a little more, we get feedback, we can make adjustments. What's interesting in this chart is there's this biseptile between Uranus and Venus. And Uranus rules science. And so the scientific process is a process of paying attention to phenomena, noticing, observing phenomena, wondering about it, being like, I wonder how that happens. And so you form a hypothesis, and then you do some testing. You set up an experiment, you do some testing to test your hypothesis, and then you collect the data and make sense of that data and compare it. This was my hypothesis. This is what the data says. And in a really robust scientific process, it would be like, I see that the data actually doesn't match what I thought. And so you have to formulate a new hypothesis, and then you have to, build another experiment and try that. And we can think of experiments with regard to Venus and Virgo as, trying something different. Maybe if the feedback we get is something different, trying something different, something like that. And I'm not saying any of this is easy. So one of the things too, I just wanted to quickly say is I think one of the ways that the scientific process can go wrong is that we don't pay attention to that feedback. We say, no, my idea is what is true. What I think about it is what's true. This data must be wrong, or we ignore data that doesn't fit with our ideas, that sort of thing. And so the idea is, can we really ground, anchor, there's also this idea of trust. Uranus and Venus. Venus rules Taurus also, in addition to ruling Libra. And Uranus is in Taurus, and this Taurus is about trust, and it's about worth, and it's about values. And so, can we value truth? Can we value, really? Can we become more honest about what we're getting back? And I don't mean this in a punitive way. I just mean, as we're all walking, can we? It's really about awareness or awakening to what the feedback is actually telling us. So that's maybe part of what I want to say here. So Neptune can be, the veil. We're not seeing it. And then Uranus is about the awakening to the veil. And Neptune can be also about awareness. So there's this idea of we need to be awake to the feedback we get from the steps we take in the world, so that we can begin to improve. And a lot of this, there's this whole, again, this base beat of Pluto in this T square with the nodes. A lot of what we do is based on habit, Capricorn habit, that was kind of instilled in us from very young, partly through cultural stuff, and then just partly through compensations around the cultural stuff and all that kind of stuff. And so that can prevent us sometimes from seeing what's actually there. But there's support here for awakening and becoming aware, and doing it, really bringing a lot of love and caring to ourselves as we go through that process. So I don't know if that makes sense. Uh, um, but this biseptal is kind of an interesting aspect. So the biseptal is part of a septile series aspect. And the septile we get the septile by dividing the circle 360 degrees by 7. And when you do that, you don't get a whole number, you get a decimal number, and that goes on infinitely. And the number that we get is 51 degrees, 25 minutes, and I think it's 43 seconds or something like that. And so a biseptal is just 2 of those. You just keep going. So if we start at 0 degrees on the natural wheel, we go 51 degrees, which would be here about 21 degrees of Taurus. And then we go another 51 degrees, and that actually brings us to here about 102 degrees of Cancer. So the waxing biseptal falls archetypally at 12 degrees of Cancer. And so there's a Cancerian theme to this energy. So it's this idea of, to me, Cancer, in a way, we can think about it as we're always emerging from a womb, from one realm into another realm. And that's kind of that birth process. So in this biseptal, we're kind of having this experience as we awaken. It's like as we will awaken when it's developmentally appropriate too. That's something to think about too. Uranus, to me, has to do with human development. And so as we're always developing, we're always emerging into new terrain, whatever, new realms of developmental experience. And so at this biseptal, I feel, is supporting us in waking up to whatever that developmental experience is that we need to, again, I don't want to talk punitively, but that's arising there, that is there, that's ready for us to be able to step into now, to birth into. If you think about the fetus in the womb, it initiates the birth cycle. So we awaken when we are ready to awaken, not before. And then we start to, pay attention. We can start to work through that new developmental layer, you could say. And part of that process involves, daily practice and that sort of thing. Again, these are my ideas based on kind of there are other truths out there, and so this is the one that I work with, that has allowed me to, I would say, grow in kindness towards myself, and maybe have some more patience with myself, and to be able to be there more for what is arising. So I feel like I rambled some, but those were some of the ideas that I had, that I've been playing with. Again, a lot has been coming up for me. One more quick thing. So a lot has been coming up for me around this Virgo theme. Again, the child at play, or our early environment, which often involves schools. And there's an interesting relationship in the chart between Gemini, which Mercury rules. It also rules Virgo, interestingly. And Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, which is structure, authority, the structures that contain us and give us a path in life, you could say. And this is an inconjunct relationship, constantly making adjustments. And so there's a need to continually make adjustments between the structures we have created and what the child, you could say, learning in a, going out and learning in the world, or just beginning to learn its environment, or whatever. So between those structures and what the child actually needs, and if we're asking the child to adapt too much, to adjust too much to the way things are, and if the way things are, the powers that be are not paying attention to what the child actually needs, then that can be a setup for dis-ease down the road. And the more of us that experience this, the more we have a culture that's dis-eased, and the more we perpetuate that. So I feel like part of what's awakening is kind of this, for me anyway, I guess I would say, is a deeper awareness about that in terms of my experiential reality, how that actually impacted me. And we can look at Uranus and Taurus. I hope I have enough time here. I forgot to set a timer. If we can think of Uranus, if we think of it as awakening, we could say, thinking about Taurus, there are two levels of awakening in a way. There's an outer awakening to what's actually happening in the world, but then there's the inner awakening to what's happening within us. And both are important. But I would argue that it's only when we get to that inner awakening level that we can start to that experience can start to heal and transform. And it's really a matter of learning how Venus is about feeling. So it's about learning how to feel, like actually the skill of feeling, I think, is really important. I just want to end this with a quick story. I had a dog once. She was just beautifully precious, and I had to give her up for a brief period of time. And a story came back to me that I didn't know until a long time later that the first couple of weeks she was there, she literally just sat down and moped around, and I never knew her like that. And I realized that, and it took her a couple weeks, and then she just kind of popped up and she was fine. And so when I think about that, she had to go through a process of grieving. She was grieving the separation from me. I got her when she was a young pup, and she was still young. She went young when I sent her off, and so I feel she was grieving, and it took time for her to adapt. But she went through that process and took the time. It just took however long it took, and then she could pop up and do something, start to engage in life again. And so I think that's one of the things that we learn in this culture, is not to be with our feelings, not to process them, to find a way around them or find a way to distract ourselves from them. And I'm really good at that myself. So that to me is another part of this that I wanted to bring forward. So I hope this was helpful and useful. I will upload this as a podcast and then also share the link to the video. I'm going to head out now because I think I'm probably close to 30 minutes, and I don't want to get cut off and lose this. So I hope there was something helpful here, something useful, and thank you for listening. And I'll be back some other time with more thoughts on something else. Okay, take care. Bye.